Mr. Short there.
I'm Chair, I'm here, and we can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. All right, it is 4:00 p.m. So Mr. Short, would you please begin the study session?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will go ahead and begin with the potential hearing items for June 29th. The first one is on the consent agenda, proposed to be on the consent agenda, and that is CUP 2024, a request for an extension of a conditional use permit for a campground, and that's out on Honeysuckle Road in Red Lake. And Zach has this case, and he's bringing up a map right now to talk about it. Zach, are you there? Hello, Zach. Can you hear me? Okay, looks like Zach's having some issues with his mic. Okay, I can go ahead. Let's see. I can go ahead and well, let's let him see if he can come back in first. There he is.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Sorry about that. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm just bringing up the site plan really quickly. And are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it, Zach.
Okay, thank you. So this is a request for an extension. Basically, any conditional use permit that goes through our processes, they have 2 years in order to get issuance of a building permit. Otherwise, the permit lapses. And in this case, we're running up close to that 2 years. The applicant, I think, is looking to sell the property along with the entitlements and wants to get an extension of this case. So here is a vicinity map, and I'm sorry I didn't prepare something a little bit better for this, but this is Highway 64. Here's SB Road. Way over to the west, we have Honeysuckle Road, which is where this case takes place. It's basically a 10-unit campground that you approved in 2020. They've gotten their septic permit for this, but they haven't started anything else. And I haven't gotten anything back on meeting any of the other conditions of approval. But the commission is able to approve for an extension of this in order to get their building permit. And if the commission is willing to do that, I would just ask for how long should this extension last? So with that, I'd like to hear what the commission has to say.
This is Commissioner Best. Let me see if I understand this. We're going to see this next month. We did this 2 years ago, and I think we probably have some of the campground conditions that we developed over the last couple of years, but probably not all. Can we add new conditions?
Commissioner Best, are you able to see where I switched the screen to the resolution from the previous case?
Yes.
Okay. So my understanding, and I can pull up the zoning ordinance reference that this is that the extensions, where the extensions are referenced. So my extension is that what's on the hearing for you to look at is whether or not you should approve an extension. And I don't believe that conditions could be added unless you denied the extension and they then went forth and got a new conditional use permit, because in effect, a denial of this extension would mean that the conditional use permit has lapsed. Now I have the previous conditions here, and I don't think it includes all of the new things that the commission has added to some of these permits. But that would be, let me pull up the zoning ordinance reference here, where it says what the criteria are for approval or denial of the extension. If I can find where the Zoom meeting is on my screens. Okay, Zoom doesn't want to play nice with me, but I'll read it to you. It says, a request for extension may be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission that will be evaluated based on current circumstances, including but not limited to percentage of the project completed, estimated completion date, surrounding land use, and citizen input. So the way that I read it, those are your criteria for approving or denying the extension request.
I'm still not 100% clear about whether we can change conditions.
I don't think that you can change conditions with an extension request. I think if that's what would be desired, that you would have to deny the extension and then a new conditional use permit application submitted. But I'll defer to legal if they have anything to add to that.
Zach, I've got nothing to add to that. I think that's the correct state of affairs, since we have the ordinance as the state of the law with a set amount of conditions and we can impose on these applications. Any sort of application proceeding under that ordinance as written wouldn't allow for any additional conditions.
Okay, I couldn't hear you real well there, but I believe that that was consistent with what you've been saying, Zach. So I think, in my opinion, I would deny it and add the full suite of campground conditions that we've developed over the last few years, unless there's a reason not to do that. Sounds like it's just administrative to me. They would walk out the door with a new CUP, and it would have all the conditions that we have developed.
And I wonder if it might help if I could have attached to the staff report the conditions of approval from the last time, and you could all look at whether or not it's consistent with what you're looking to do. And I would reiterate that we want the decision to deny an extension would have to be under those circumstances that I read from the zoning ordinance. Basically, the request needs to be evaluated based on, and it's a little bit broad, on current circumstances, including but not limited to percentage of the project completed. So we only have basically a septic permit for it, estimated completion date, surrounding land use, and citizen input. So unfortunately, that's kind of the only guidance you have here for your approval or denial.
Zach, I'd like to jump in here. We have dealt with this before in the past, and in a case like this, we have not been inclined to attempt to add any conditions on a renewal like this, just as a matter of precedent. So we have dealt with this question before, and I think I'm pretty much in agreement with SOT as how to proceed with this. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it seems to me, this is SOT again, it seems to me that we've done administrative extension. There was a different category where we could not really add conditions or deny. I'm getting a little confused here, and I apologize.
Let me see if I could clarify just a little bit.
If you could clarify that, and also when you send us the packet, send out the list of criteria.
Absolutely. So Commissioner Best, When a conditional use permit gets approved, typically what happens is they get building permits and every other permit, like a septic permit or an engineering permit and so on. And getting the building permit issued vests the use. If the zoning ordinance requires that they vest the use within 2 years of getting approval of the CUP. If that's happened and they meet all the conditions of approval within the timeline that's allotted for the conditional use permit, then they can get an administrative renewal in which we cannot add any other conditions to the permit. So that's if they've vested the use. This is a case where they have not vested the use because within 2 years they have not gotten a building permit. So this request that you're here, that you would be hearing, is for an extension of that 2-year time period to some period of the commission's choosing in which to vest that use to basically validate the conditional use permit, otherwise it lapses. Does that make more sense, or hopefully?
It does, yes, and yeah, if you could just put that in the report, and then it sounds like if we have the easiest way would be if we had a citizen who wanted to do this, but we may be able to do it through just the commission. But it sounds, I mean, these are not onerous conditions by any means. They're mostly educational for the public that shows up, and sounds like we could do this. We could have the applicant leave with his CUP intact, or a new CUP, which I think would take care of his needs, his or her needs. So if you could put all that in the staff report and take it from there.
Sure, and I just want to be very clear that this case that you're looking at tonight, to be heard in the June hearing would be for extension. You could not add any conditions to it, and the criteria were those that I discussed about new circumstances, percentage of project completed. That's what the decision would need to be based on, and I'll make that clear in my report.
But we could deny it. Is that true?
Yeah, you could deny it based on those criteria, and in that case, they would have to come back for a new CUP.
Okay, could you get this out a little earlier than normal so we could digest it?
It should be a relatively easy staff report, so I can
Okay.
work on that for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Schwartz, this is Chair Ontiveros. To answer your question that you were asking the commission about how long we would want to continue this for, has the applicant given you any indication when they feel it would be completed?
Chair Ontiveros, to be honest with you, I was just recently sort of given this case, so I haven't really discussed, but I don't know if they're here in the audience. I see some people that are not part of the staff or commission, and maybe they want to chime in, but I haven't been able to ascertain that.
Okay, the reason that I'm asking, let me ask if the applicant is here. And if so, could you please unmute and identify yourself? Okay, I'm not seeing any Mr. Schwartz, so I'm going to assume that they are not with us this evening. But the reason that I asked the question is I think the applicant would be the one that would best answer that, to say, okay, I plan on having this completed in 1 year. And then it seems to me that a 1-year continuance would be appropriate. Generally, we have given continuances based on the applicant's request. Do you feel like you've got a pretty good amount of time? Are you thinking, 12 months? What are you thinking?
Madam Chair, I think 1 year sounds reasonable for this sort of request, but I think you're right that I would probably need to figure out when the applicant is trying to complete the project to give you a better idea. I don't know if Mr. Short has spoken about this with the applicant. Maybe he could chime in on that.
Yes, I could speak to that. I did speak to the applicant extensively and let them know what the criteria was. The criteria is just kind of written in a couple of sentences in the zoning ordinance. It's not like a written criteria. And he has it's the request is, it does not include the timeline for when it would be done. And I'll say, I think Zach said this earlier, but in this case, the applicant actually is wanting to sell the property with a conditional use permit to another person who is as we speak, in the process of buying the property. They may even buy the property before it goes to the hearing in June. I let them know clearly that this is not a guarantee that it would be extended. I also let them know that typically the commission has extended these, but that there was no guarantee it would be extended. So that's basically where we are with this. They've done some work, such as they've done work on the roads. They've done, like Zach said, they got a septic permit. I think they've installed some power to the property. They've done a few things like that, but they haven't gotten a building permit and started work on the project. So that's basically where we are with this.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, is the building permit what triggers the percentage of work done? Because you said they've got a septic permit, they've done work on the roads. Would that constitute a percentage of how much work has been completed? Because that is one of the criteria that the commission considers when we would approve an extension.
Madam Chair, I was just thinking there's a little bit of irony here in that you don't need to get an extension unless you haven't got a building permit. And so if you did get a building permit, it doesn't really matter how much work you've done on it. If you've gotten the building permit issued, then you don't need to get an extension. You've fulfilled your obligation. So there's a little bit of irony in that, because they haven't gotten a building permit, of course, and you really can't do a lot without getting the building permit. So they have done
Right.
a few things. They've improved Honeysuckle Road quite a bit, laid down quite a bit actually of cinders on the road. I don't think they've worked with an engineer to see if that, if it's adequate for a fire truck yet or anything like that. They've extended APS power, like I said. They've done septic work, so they have done a few things.
Okay. Okay. So then, Zach, to go back to answer your question, if the original CUP was for 2 years, in my mind, but I'm very interested in what the other commissioners think, I would think that a year would be more than sufficient for this applicant to obtain a building permit. That's just my thought.
I would like to speak to that. We have done this a number of times in the past with a simple 1-year extension to keep the CUP alive. The case has been, well, not exactly totally similar, but the same kind of thing. And we have done this before.
Madam Chair, this is Jay. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Crystalman.
Oh, thank you. So historically, and this has been for several years now, the Community Development Department has considered a building permit to be the issuance of a grading permit, a wastewater permit. It doesn't necessarily mean a vertical building permit. I just wanted to share that context to add to what Bob was saying.
So then, if they have a septic permit, then would that be sufficient?
Madam Chair, yes.
Okay, so then if that's the case, I guess I'm not understanding why they need an extension, because if they have the permit, then basically the CUP is alive.
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify really quickly. I saw that there was a septic permit issued. Basically, it's a site investigation where we've dug and tested the soil.
Oh, thank you for that clarification, Zach.
Sorry, Jay.
Okay, so then there hasn't been a permit issued. of any sort, a grading permit, a septic permit. There's been no official permit issued.
There's been just the site investigation.
Okay. All right. Well, and have you explained all of this? I'm just wondering if it's possible that the applicant would be able to get a permit of any sort prior to the hearing, and then the CUP would be alive and this would not even be necessary.
Good point, Madam Chair. I'll bring that up to the applicant and see if they want to start working on that.
Madam Chair, I guess the point in this case was that the CUP, they applied for the extension really close to the time the CUP would have expired. So it's kind of past that date at this point, because it gives you the 2 years, and that I think it was like the day before it expired, they applied for an extension, or maybe the day of, even it was right, near the time.
Oh, okay. So they would have had to have had a permit issued within that 2-year time period, and that has already come and gone. So now we are in this territory. So we are going to need to deal with the extension. Okay. All right. That's all I've got. Do the commissioners have any other questions for Mr. Schwartz at this time? Okay. Not seeing any. Mr. Short, would you please continue on with the study session?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will. The next case is CUP 21073. It's a request for a conditional use permit renewal of CUP 17-034 for a 10-space RV park and caretaker's quarters. This is located in the planned community zone where CH 10,000 standards apply. This is the Gabbard property, also known as I believe the Pine View, and gosh, I can't think of what it's called. Pine Breeze. The Pine Breeze. This was continued from, I believe, February, so that this applicant could get a survey of the property to determine exactly where things were on the property. And this is assigned to Kelly. She's ready to present it. Kelly, are you muted?
Can you hear me now, Bob?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, Commission. I'm just going to go through a quick presentation since there's some things that I wanted to show you. If you'll remember, this was the Gabbard case, CH 10,000 standards applied, and they were requesting 10 additional spaces, or I'm sorry, 5 additional storage spaces in addition to the 10 spaces that they had for RV camping. And I wanted to give you some updates. We've only received preliminary drawings so far from the applicant. They're working with Martin Land Surveys right now. And I know that Martin has been doing work for them, but I haven't seen a sealed survey yet. But the applicant told me on Monday that I should be receiving it soon. Based on the preliminary drawing, it looks like the buildings in question actually were within the boundaries. But there were a couple of other things that might not be in that case. For example, their access and part of the concrete slab. So let me show you what that actually looks like. This is what I received from the applicant. As you can see, it's not to scale and it's not sealed. So there is question of if this will be what the final product looks like. But you can see both of the buildings that were in question at the hearing appear to be within the property lines. They have a 0-foot setback standard from historical. That's just their historical setback. And they have plans to move these RV pads within their property boundaries. And just for reference, this yellow line is where we thought that the boundaries were based on Parcel Viewer. And then the blue boundaries would be the ones that were proposed in this site plan that I just showed you. So that's just kind of my approximation based on what they gave me. Hopefully we'll get something a little bit more reliable soon. So obviously there's still some questions. Personally, I have questions about if the access road is a legal access or if it could be, if it's not currently. Obviously, the accuracy of the drawing that they provided and how soon we can get something sealed. And if any additional storage is going to be requested, since it wasn't drawn onto their drawing that they provided. And I was just going to ask the commission if they had anything else that they were looking for, or if they had any questions as well.
Yeah, Kelly.
Hi, Commissioner Ruggles.
Hi. As far as the access road, that may be just a matter of an encroachment permit because across the right of way that exists. So might be worth looking at that. Public Works, if I think Old 66 there is a county right of way for that. So that is something that Public Works handles.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Commissioner Ruggles.
Okay, Ms. Bingham, I'm not seeing any other commissioners with hands raised or unmuted. So I think that completes it. Mr.
All
Short,
right.
if you want to move on to the next one, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next case is a request for a conditional use permit for a wireless, it's actually a private wireless telecommunications facility on a 2.27 acre parcel in the PC zone to CH 10,000 standards applied. And this property is located on Brannigan Park Road in Belmont. And this is Kelly's case as well.
All right. Hello again, everyone. This case is for APS, Arizona Public Service. Their representative is Julie. And the parcel in question is CH 10,000 zone. And their request is for that conditional use permit, as Bob mentioned. Their proposal is for an 85-foot monopole, which I have a picture of. Just to give you some quick context of where this is located, it's this parcel right here along Brannigan Park Road right here. As you can see, it's right off the I-40 and it abuts the National Forest. And here is a picture of the proposed tower. These are the photo sims they provided us with. As you can see, it's about 85 feet. And this photo was taken from right in between the lanes on I-40, I believe. I'll give you a moment to look at that. Staff is going to be considering the favored criteria, how much of that they meet. But are there any questions from the commission on this case?
Yes, Kelly, when you say this is an APS wireless, what does that mean exactly? This is just internal APS?
Yes, that's my understanding. It's just internal APS. They give us a nice paragraph saying why it can't be co-located, but it is private and they do need direct access to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, when we get to the most favored criteria, no way to put it on top of one of those existing poles?
Yeah, no, we asked them that and they were able to provide some justification for having it separate and not on top of another pole.
Okay, then I guess we'll see that in the report. Thank you very much.
Elliot, got a question for you here.
Sure.
Would you, in working with APS on this, find out what the color of the monopole is? And the reason I ask is if it is a galvanized monopole, it would work much better than, say, what we see over at the pilot truck stop with a monopole that is flat black, and the contrast with the surroundings with that flat black pole is something that really stands out. Whereas something that is eventually going to turn gray over a period of time would not nearly be as much of a contrast. So when we get down to the hearing, would be useful to find out what they're proposing in terms of the material for the monopole and the finish.
Thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Ruggles. The applicant, from my understanding, is proposing perhaps a blue-gray color. I don't remember seeing anything about galvanized steel. I think they were proposing to paint it. However, they did mention that they were very open to suggestions from the commission.
Essentially, it is just a matter of not really defining the color for them. It's a matter of just what they can propose and what will work in terms of limiting the amount of contrast available. And, you know, a blue-gray, somebody's thought about this, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Ruggles.
Okay, Ms. Bingham, I'm not seeing any other hands raised or unmuted, so I think that completes that. Mr. Short, if you would like to continue on, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The next case is EP 22051. It's a request for a distillery processed as a cottage industry on a 4.54 acre parcel in the general zone. And this parcel is located on Pioneer Path in Parks, just right off of the on-off ramp there to Parks. And this is Zach's case.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, this is Zach Schwartz with planning staff, and I'm showing right now the vicinity map. So here's the Parks exit here. Take that a little bit south to where Pioneer Path kind of splits from Garland Prairie Road, and we're just here amongst other G zone and adjacent to Coconino National Forest. Here's an aerial view of the property. So there's an existing home here, and there's an accessory structure here adjacent to the Forest Service. The applicant's site plan shows that the accessory structure where the cottage industry would take place is 25 feet from the border with Forest Service and 150 feet from neighboring G-zone residential. We have a floor plan here of the accessory structure that would be used. And so it includes 4 50-gallon mash tuns for the brewing, 1 30-gallon and 1 13-gallon stills, a work area, a place to store the raw material, and a place to store the finished spirits. The applicant would be distilling vodka and whiskey from the accessory structure, and the process includes the brewing with malted barley, then fermentation with yeast, and then distillation. And the applicant in their narrative has stated that they would give the spent grain to local residents as animal feed. Apparently, it's supposed to be pretty nutritious. The hours of operation would be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., 3 or 4 days a week. And the applicant would be the only employee of the business. Customers wouldn't come to the site. The applicant would take the product to different stores to sell. And there would be 1 delivery truck per month to the property to provide the raw materials. I looked a little bit into, I did some research on the project. And so one thing I was looking at is for the cottage industry, because it's supposed to remain primarily residential. The zoning ordinance calls out that the place where the industry is happening should be 50% of the combined space of the home and the accessory structure. And when I was doing that research, I found that the home, only 674 square feet of the existing home, it was an A-frame that was added onto. It's now 2,800 square feet. Only 674 square feet of the home was actually permitted. And so staff is going to have the applicant apply for a special inspection. Basically, the building permit would, or the building division would go and inspect for health and safety issues for the unpermitted additions. And I think these were done by a previous owner, these additions. The building permit would inspect, and if they found anything that was hazardous, they would require retroactive permitting for that. But that's one of the bigger issues that I've found with this application, and I think staff can condition that they complete any sort of work that comes from the special inspection prior to initiating the business. But with that given, they would meet the ratio of the single family residence and accessory dwelling to the area that's proposed for the workspace. As far as noise, smell, and general safety, there would be a number of different divisions of our department and state and federal regulators that would review for fire rating issues, water, wastewater, and other types of health and safety issues. And the applicant does work at a distillery currently, so the applicant should have some idea of best practices. But those are the main concerns that I've looked at for my initial review before going through the full analysis. And if the commission has any comments, questions, or things that I should look into for the analysis, I'm happy to take that input.
Mr. Schwartz, I'm not seeing any. So Mr. Short, if you would continue on, please.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. We have one case on our administrative agenda, administrative renewal agenda. It's a community service agency camp out in the Clint's Well area. So I don't think we'll have much trouble with that one. Staff will take care of that. Let me move on to the community development update.
I'd like to
Yes,
say something here.
Commissioner Best.
I'm very frustrated that we cannot review conditions in these cases, and I don't quite know where to take my frustration. Again, this is a situation where you got folks out in the woods, and we've really learned a lot about that in the last couple of years. I would not want to impose anything onerous on an applicant like this, but I think there's an educational process that we've been through that, and we can now help our applicants serve their clients better and do some things that add, shall I say, health and safety to the forest and surrounding areas. And maybe this is better brought up in some different format, but I just like at some point to sit down with somebody and figure out how we can. It's just frustrating to have this go by us. We could do some good without any problem for the applicant, and yet we can't. We're restricted from doing it. So if anybody's got any ideas on that, I'd love to hear them.
Commissioner Best, actually, on cases that are under administrative renewal, they can be pulled off of the administrative renewal agenda and put on the hearing schedule at the request of a commissioner.
You know, I thought that was the way that it used to be, and my understanding is that the zoning ordinance changed. Am I wrong there?
Mr. Short, could you speak to that? Mr. Short?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I thought I'd unmuted. It is my understanding as well that that did change with the 2019 update of the zoning ordinance, and that procedure was pulled out of the zoning ordinance, and the commissioners could no longer just pull a case off and ask that it be heard. It is something we can certainly take a note on. I'll take a look back at it again, but I think we talked about this a while ago with another case, and that was the way the ordinance is now written. We can certainly make a note of it and add that back in, because it does seem like in some cases certainly good for the commission if they would like to review a case again to bring it back to a hearing again.
Yeah, could Mr. Lumpkin, would you know for sure one way or the other on this?
I'm looking into it right now, just combing through the zoning ordinance to see if there's anything that can shed light on that question.
Okay.
Yes, my understanding is the only way is that if it lapses, if it expires, then of course they have to come back for a hearing at that point.
And it used to be if there were conditions that were not satisfied, or I believe if complaints, have all of those been removed? All of those triggers?
Madam Chair, if there are complaints, it can be brought back. What it says in the ordinance now is that, as you can see right there, if the complaints are resolved within 30 days, then they do not have to come back to a hearing.
Okay. Okay, so to Commissioner Best's point, maybe on some of these, maybe some of them should be looked at, but I don't have the answer here tonight either. So I think Commissioner's statements were good. With that, let's go ahead and go to community development update, please.
Okay, Madam Chair. Recruiting for assistant director position, planning manager position does remain on hold due to lack of qualified candidates. So we've kind of put that on hold for now. The board chambers has been updated to hold hybrid meetings. However, county management has not determined when the live meetings would resume. And the next three are items that Melissa Shaw is working on, if she could speak to those.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. This is Melissa Shaw, Long Range Planner with the county. And Bob, I closed my copy of the agenda and it won't load again. So could you tell me what the first one is on the list, please?
Yes, the first item is the Donny Park Timberland Fernwood area plan.
Thank you. Yes. So we are meeting with the area plan committee tomorrow night. They are nearing completion of reviewing all of the April open house comments and the comments on the goals and policies and the draft plan. We are still looking forward to scheduling a study session with the Planning and Zoning Commission next month at your June 29th study session, with the goal to bring it to public hearing for your July 27th hearing. So that is our fairly solid schedule at this point. And, you know, the committee has done a lot of work on it. There's been a lot of discussion back and forth on different issues. We are actually giving an update to the Board of Supervisors on June 7th. That will include an update on the Donny Park, Timberline, Fernwood area plan, as well as the regional plan and comprehensive plan update. So that is something that we can certainly share a link to that with the commission if anyone is interested in getting into more of the details on that project. And I think that segues into the next item as well. Is it the regional plan, Bob?
Did you talk about the brownfields yet? The brownfields?
The brownfields grant is ongoing. There are still funds available for property owners that wish to apply to have environmental assessments conducted. It's phase 1 environmental assessment where contractors would come in and for commercial properties determine if there is any on-site hazardous materials such as lead-based paint or asbestos or possibly oil contamination from soil contamination from leaking gas tanks and oil tanks. So that's a very helpful program. We've had a couple of properties in the county take advantage of that. So I think we've mentioned before that there's a good chance that the grant will be extended. We haven't exhausted all the funds yet. So we'll keep pitching that at your upcoming meetings. And then on the Flagstaff Regional Plan, as you know, it was last month that this commission had a joint meeting with the City Planning and Zoning Commission to do a SWOT analysis on the current regional plan. And I do believe that we still owe this commission a summary of the results of that, and also a link to complete your evaluation of those of the inputs that you made to that quote whiteboard. So I know that there was interest in continuing that. So we've been pretty busy with doing some quite a few public outreach events and getting with other boards and commissions on a similar exercise. So we will definitely be following up with you on that. And again, that's one of the updates that we'll be bringing to the Board of Supervisors on June 7th at their work session. And then just finally too, on the county's comprehensive plan update, we are starting to think ahead about what that will entail. And as you know, the current comprehensive plan was adopted in December of 2015. So given the statutory requirement to update it every 10 years, we would want to have that ready for adoption at the end of, that will be 2025. And so in order to gear up for that, we're starting to think about what we would want to do to prepare. And we're going to be talking to the board with some ideas about forming an informal scoping group to kind of review and do some interviews about, how that plan functions, what we may want to think about adding to or changing for the future, and then some timing strategies for that. We do want to get Donny Park, Timberline, Fernwood area plan complete before we jump into that, because there will be overlap and it will be concurrent with the regional plan update. So that's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of those projects.
Yeah, Melissa, the SWOT project, my understanding is that's still open. Is that true for the regional plan?
Yes, I believe. And I apologize that I am not recalling exactly if we sent you back links to complete that. Do you recall seeing a link?
I think I did, but I think I got a little lost trying to figure it out and moved on to other things in my life. So
okay, I will follow up.
Take a look at it. I'll take a look at it and contact you if I can't get into it. But is there a date certain by which we have to get things put into it before it closes?
I have to go back and look, to be honest with you. I am not, there's been too many meetings and I haven't got that date on my calendar. So, but I will double check that and get back with all of you on it.
I understand completely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'll move on now. I think I stand corrected on that, on the question that Commissioner Best had, because I can pull up the zoning ordinance here. It doesn't allow a commissioner expressly to pull off something, but let me go ahead and share my screen. I'll show you what I'm seeing. All right, can everyone see that okay?
Not yet, Bob.
Oh, is it up yet?
There it is.
Okay, good. Okay, so this says that under D, a conditional use permit must be renewed upon a hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission where, and I'll move down several here, a change in the predicted impacts of the use has occurred. I think that I'll ask our legal representative here, Aaron, Does that look like a point where the commission could pull something off? I would think that a change in predicted impacts of a campground would have occurred over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it would require a little bit of analysis from staff to
Okay.
point out any changes between what was considered at the time it was initially approved and the conditions as they exist now.
Okay. If the commission wishes, then we can take a look at this case and see if we can, if that applies to this case. It is a campground. It is completely, my understanding is it's completely a tent campground. So it's all tents. There aren't any buildings or anything. So, you know, they definitely have had fire rings in the past, according to the pictures that I saw. So is that something the commission would like us to look into?
Yes, I would like to take a look at that. I would just want to review the conditions that we have on the existing CUP and see if we have predicted any impacts and added conditions to other cases after that. My bet is that we have.
Yeah, I'll go along with Commissioner Best on that one. I think it should be looked at.
Yeah, and mostly it's just, it was, most of those 15 or 16 conditions that we came up with were, you know, educational. A lot of them were anyway. And
Okay,
so
we can take a look at that and kind of determine if that fits, and, you know, work with legal to see what their opinion is on whether this would be a case that could be, you know, the predicted impacts could have changed quite a bit. We definitely have looked at campgrounds differently over the last few years.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
With that, we'll move on. Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Sure. Yeah, I think we're on the Board of Supervisors update.
thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, the board, we're at the last Board of Supervisors meeting on May 10th. They approved the renewable energy ordinance, amendment to the floodplain management overlay, and the Swaggart zone change. Those are all approved on May 10th. We don't have anything going. Actually, we do now. We have the Windmill Ranch case going. I believe it's on August 9th. They wanted to have a live hearing, so they didn't want to go right away. They moved it up. They moved their request up to August 9th for a hearing. And that brings us up to Commission and Staff Roundtable. Are there any issues commissioners would like to discuss?
I'm not seeing any Mr. Short, so why don't we go ahead and move in on to KC, the KCP 22-011, et cetera.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Okay, commissioners, this is a study session that was requested last month. On April 27th, the commission asked for additional information to be provided at a special study session. And since we only have one case tonight on the agenda, requesting a hearing, requesting a continuance, we decided to go ahead and have it now. So we'll start this study session now. If it does go long, then it'll be interrupted by the hearing, a very short hearing, and then continue after the hearing. So tonight, I first want to start out with some legal instructions on study sessions from our legal representative, Aaron Lumpkin. Aaron.
Commission, just wish to remind everyone participating tonight that with this being a study session, given that all members of the commission are present, it is a public meeting, but
Counselor, let me interrupt here. I need you to get on the phone. I can't hear you. And I'm sure that the rest of the commission can't either. So please get closer to the speaker or something. Thank you.
okay, working that out right now. I apologize for that. Can everyone hear me just fine now?
Oh, that is so much better. Thank you, Mr. Lumpkin. Please proceed.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
sir. Thank you.
Yeah, so just wishing to remind everyone that even though this is a study session, since all members of the commission are present, it does qualify as a public meeting. And as such, it has to proceed as it was noticed and published, and that being as a study session where facts are presented, questions can be asked by members of the commission, but the merits of the case and the project itself cannot be discussed. So just given the scope of this project and the information involved, we foresee that it would be very easy in this kind of discussion to get into discussing the merits of the application, but just wishing to redirect everyone to remember that this is solely for the purpose of asking staff questions and giving staff direction and myself direction for questions that they would like to have answered at the future presentation next month. But that's the extent of my legal advice and recommendation to the commission at this time.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, we will go ahead and continue. So what we have planned tonight is, first of all, we have Jessica Simmons, our wildlife planner, who will speak about wildlife corridors. She'll talk about some things that have come up with that. And then we have the applicant here representing Clenera, and he will provide a presentation kind of going over the case, kind of going over the project and talking about specifics of the project. And we also have Hannah Griscom with us. She doesn't have a presentation. She's just here representing the Arizona Fish and Game Department. And she can answer questions about wildlife and about issues with the department. I did want to say that this, we want to make this kind of free-flowing. So as things are presented, the commission may ask questions as they go along. Like if there's a certain map up you want to talk about, then feel free to go ahead and ask questions as we go along. So we'll start with Jessica Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Short. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, there we go. Can I move this? This thing's in the way of, there we go. I wanted to show you guys, if you can see my screen, I wanted to show you guys a picture of the migration corridors we've been talking about for the big game. We've got a map of mule deer corridors, which mostly cross the project. If you can see here, the project is in green on the eastern side. And then I've got a picture of the pronghorn corridors, which the red shows the highest use areas. They mostly cross the project through the west and around the western edge of it, and then through the middle. And I just want to show you these. These are, in talking with the experts over at Game and Fish, they have told me that these are centuries old corridors. They're very important for pronghorn and deer. And they are some of the few that have been scientifically identified using collar data and other data to delineate where they are. And this area that they're moving through is a pretty big chunk of intact habitat that is available to these animals, bounded by the Grand Canyon, Highway 89, Highway 64, and then Interstate 40 to the south. And I just wanted to show you guys, or I think you guys have seen this letter. So we received a letter from Game and Fish. I'm showing it on my screen. And the county contacted the department asking for their input on this project. And they wrote a letter, which will be in your packet. And in the letter, they requested that certain of these, if you can see my mouse, certain of these where the corners of the project touch be opened up so that animals can move through. And there's certain areas where they requested half-mile corridors. And I'm just going to show you on here. This is the site plan from the applicant. And you can see that here and here, Clenera has opened up these two areas for animals to pass through, and they've made it a half mile here. But two other spots, I had a lot of trouble understanding the letter from Game and Fish. So I drove over to the office and had them circle on a map for me where they wanted to see these half-mile corridors. And the other place they circled for me was here and here. So basically where this westernmost section of the project, section 29, is, they wanted to see half-mile around these. And currently the most recent project map that I have shows a quarter-mile here, and it looks like here too, although it's not labeled. So I just wanted to show you those. And I just wanted to clarify that Arizona Game and Fish does not have jurisdiction on private land. So the letter that they have sent regarding this project shows recommendations from them. And but these are requests that are based on their knowledge and expertise as the foremost wildlife experts in the state. And that's everything I wanted to show.
Simmons, this is Chair Ontiveros. So has the developer then modified to put a half a mile in there where it was a quarter of a mile?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. And I will give you, I do understand what you were saying, that Arizona Game and Fish Department does not have any authority to regulate on private property.
Correct.
But as commissioners, we do look to their expertise, because I don't think any of us commissioners are biologists or wildlife experts. And so we do look to their guidance and direction and their expertise, and we do look at those recommendations. So I know that the developer is going to be addressing the commission later. So I am looking to hear the developer's comments on the Game and Fish's recommendation for that. That's all I've got. Commissioner Best, your hand is raised.
Thank you. So this is checkerboard, private and state. And we're assuming the state land will stay open. Is that a safe assumption?
That's a really good point, and I can't speak to that, but I do want to say, this is a good point you brought up. I did want to mention that even if those state sections that are interspersed in between where the project is being shown on this map, even if they are fenced, Ms. Griscom from the Department of Game and Fish has told me that most of the fencing out there has been modified to allow pronghorn to pass through any fencing, and maybe she or Mr. Fitzgerald can speak more to that. But as far as future development plans, I couldn't tell you.
Now, my understanding of state land, well, I don't have a great understanding of it, but I kind of look at it as private land. It can be sold and it could be developed for residences or for more of this kind of installation. So that's something we might want to think about as we move forward. And I don't know if we can resolve it or not.
Well, maybe I could add a little bit to that. If that state land is sold and it is not already zoned in the county, it automatically becomes zoned as open space, which opens up the process to us on the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors as to what the use will be via rezoning or zone change.
Okay, and I assume that's been leased to the Babbitts for 100 years. So, okay, thanks. That's just a question.
Ms. Simmons, could you please put up the previous map showing the wildlife corridors, please?
Yes, there are two. This is the mule deer one. It's
Okay.
it's narrower and it crosses through the east. And this is the pronghorn one.
Okay, so on the pronghorn one, the red area is the corridor. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that's right. And the red shows higher use than orange or gray. And then the black stippled areas are where they spend the winter.
Okay. So if you look at the western corridor, there is, it looks like there is a whole section that is being placed in one of the, in that. Am I correct in my understanding of this map?
Yes,
Okay, and these are century-old corridors
yes.
and they're highly used. And so it's taking out, what, 640 acres?
About
Am I
that, yeah,
right with that?
almost, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Best, your hand is still raised. Do you have anything else?
I guess I would comment. I wonder if we could move that section. But you kind of asked that question without asking it yourself, so that's something maybe staff could take under advisement. And that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the other commissioners have questions at this point for Ms. Simmons? Okay, and I'm not seeing any. Please go ahead, Ms. Simmons.
Oh, that was all I had at this time, but feel free to ask many more questions at any time.
Okay, Madam Chair, are we ready to move on to Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yeah, you know what? I thought that I was unmuted, but I was muted. Ms. Simmons, could you put up the Mule Deer corridor map? Okay, and so it is, the red is the Mule Deer corridor in this one. So there are some corridors that are also being affected by the mule deer as well, right?
Correct. And just to remind you, this is in the areas where Game and Fish asked for 1/2 mile corridors. Clenera did put in all the corridors they requested to be 1/2 mile in this area.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Okay, and that's all I've got. I'm not seeing any other commissioners' hands raised. So Mr. Short, please go ahead.
I do have one more question. We have received a fairly long written presentation from the applicant. It discussed, among other things, eagles and I think some other birds. So my question would be to Ms. Simmons is, are you in agreement with what was in that report from the applicant?
Is it the one just from today, or is this the older one, the biological memo?
Well, it's the one that we got, that we were sent. And so I'm not exactly sure.
Well, so you guys asked me last month about eagles, and I said there would likely, well, at the time I speculated that it was possible that the fenced in areas would create more, potentially more prey for them, but that it would also make it more difficult for them to hunt. And I did get in touch with the eagle expert at Game and Fish since then, and he didn't mention anything about possibly increased prey for them inside the fences, but he did agree with me that probably would not have a big effect on eagles, with the exception of it making it slightly more difficult for them to hunt inside the areas with the panels.
Mm-hmm. And there were some representations in what we received in the packet about being a long way from nests and that sort of thing. Were you able to review that?
Yeah, I have read that. I'm not sure if I read the exact document you're talking about, but I have read, yes, the information I have on this project does agree with that, yes.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, Madam Chair, are we ready to move on to Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Tom, can you go ahead and make your presentation?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you able to hear me, Madam Chair and Commissioners?
Yes, we can hear you really good. So please go
good.
ahead.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon. My name is Tom Fitzgerald. I am the Director of Development at Clenera that is overseeing the day-to-day development of the Cobar Solar Project Complex. First of all, I'd just like to take a minute and apologize for not being present at last month's meeting. So I'm happy to be here today to answer any questions you all may have about this project, the development of solar, the activities that we've taken on site today. So I'll just quickly run through this. If you'd like me to stop at any point, please interject and I'd be happy to do so and answer any questions. So I'll just give a quick overview on Clenera. Clenera is a utility scale solar developer that's based in Boise, Idaho. We were founded in 2013, and to date, we have constructed 1.6 gigawatts of utility scale solar projects across 11 states in the US. We have a contracted pipeline to bring roughly another 1,000 megawatts online by the end of 2023. That does not include any components of this project, so that number is actually a little bit outdated. Excuse me, but we intend to basically double our operational capacity by about 2023 to 2024. Just diving into the complex in general, what we are proposing is an up to 1,500 megawatt AC photovoltaic generating and storage facility that's located roughly 35 miles north of Flagstaff, just off of Highway 180. The project is going to be interconnecting to the existing APS Navajo transmission system, 500 kV transmission lines that parallel and transect the project site. There is a project ahead of us, the Babbitt Renewable Energy Center, that is going to be building a substation that is initially tapping into those lines. Our project will expand that substation slightly. Actually, APS will be doing the work to expand the substation to accommodate a larger substation configuration for this project to plug into it. Currently, we have about 12,000 acres under site control, all with the Babbitts through the Cobar Ranch. 400 megawatts out of the initial 1,000 megawatts has been contracted with the Salt River project. And we have two other 80 megawatts or 160 megawatts in total that have a power purchase agreement with APS. So out of the first 1,000 megawatts, 560 megawatts is slated to come online and start construction roughly in by December of 2024. So maybe I'll pause here, Chairwoman, and see if there's any initial questions before moving on.
Yeah, I have a question. Would this be one of the larger or largest site photovoltaic sites in the country?
I think that this project will probably fall into a cohort of larger projects that we see, but yes, it is possible that this will be one of the largest projects in operation by the time it is completed. The projects, just kind of as I look historically over the last 10 years, have gotten incrementally larger, but I think that is a fair statement, Commissioner.
Thank you.
So I'll just touch quickly on some of the benefits of the Cobar solar complex. It's going to be roughly a $2.3 billion capital investment at the full build out of 1,500 megawatts. Assuming that we get to that full build out of 1,500 megawatts, there would be an incremental approximately $65 million in incremental property taxes across the 35-year useful life of that project. To date, we are estimating that year one, the incremental property tax increases will be approximately $1.6 million for that contracted portion of the project, or the 560 megawatts. We anticipate that there will be roughly a 300 megawatt construction jobs at peak, and that will kind of carry on consistently for the 18 to 24 month build out of the project. To manage the site long term, there will probably be 3 to 5 long-term on-site personnel that are doing kind of day-to-day work, but there will be continuing contributions to the local economy through different contractors, vendors, people going out to lunch on their lunch break. So the 3 to 5 long-term jobs, I think, is a little bit of an understatement in terms of its actual economic contribution locally. All of the power that's contracted to date is being used to serve customers in Arizona for APS and SRP. And that power will be about 250,000, will power, roughly 250,000 Arizona homes. There's some other facts here. Just on CO2 emissions equivalent, roughly 200 million gallons of gasoline burned is what the CO2 offset will be for the 1,500 megawatts. So clearly very substantial. Why the CO bar? I think first and foremost is the partnership with the Babbitts and the CO bar ranch. Obviously, they have a giant land holding out there, but more than anything, they're a very willing partner to bring renewable development to northern Arizona as part of a larger conservation play to protect their lands and make the CO bar an example for other private land holdings that can enter into public-private partnerships that can benefit the land from being developed into residential or other, more human-oriented uses such as housing complexes. So I think really there, we're just thrilled to be a part of that endeavor. We've been working with Billy Cardasco and the Babbitts since 2018 on this project. I think it's taken many shapes over that time period, and we're just really happy with the way that it is playing out and unfolding in terms of its integration into the fabric of kind of the larger CO bar complex and conservation district. The other primary driver is that it is in direct proximity to the Navajo Southern Transmission System. I'm sure, as you all know, these transmission lines come out of the retired Navajo Generating Station that sits in Page, Arizona. Those lines, given the retirement, are hugely underutilized resources that the state and the utilities within Arizona are looking to lever to bring clean, carbon-free, renewable resources into their power mix and not beholden the ratepayer by building new transmission systems, but by utilizing the systems that are already in place. Over the last several years, we've also done quite a bit of due diligence out there to make sure that there are limited to no natural or cultural resources out there, and coming up with a consistent development plan that allows us to mitigate those to the extent possible. If there's no questions, I'll just quickly flip through some site photos here to give a sense on what the landscape looks like. Obviously, I only have, I think, 8 photos here, so it doesn't fully encompass what the site looks like in great detail, but it should give you a good flavor of what the landscape looks like out there. There's no questions here. I'll just touch quickly on some of the design features. Our intent is to adhere strictly to the RIO and the updated RIO. We don't anticipate that the project's going to impact any wetlands. We will put together a robust vegetation restoration plan that will be implemented kind of as part of the construction efforts, but then also post-construction to restore vegetation under the arrays. We have worked really, really hard and in close concert with with the Arizona Fish and Game Department to come up and understand the migration patterns that have moved across the site for both mule deer and pronghorn. And we'll spend a few minutes talking about that in a little bit more detail in a second. A few other design features that I just want to point out is that we will also be leaving roughly a 6-inch gap under the bottom of the fence for wildlife friendly fencing. This allows small prey-based animals such as rabbits, rats, ground squirrels to move in and use the arrays as habitat. On the right, you'll see just kind of a matrix of photos from various projects that we own and operate across the United States. One, you can see our long-eared hare. This is one of our projects in California. The next is a Western sage grouse. This is actually a project that we operate in Wyoming. It's really interesting. We've been, as part of the development process of this project, we had been monitoring the sage grouse movements in and around the project for up to 3 years. And the biologist that has been conducting that monitoring for us is about to publish a white paper about how solar is actually beneficial to the habitat of the Western sage grouse. So I just kind of mentioned that as a corollary to the fact that, once these installations go in the ground, there's, really limited disturbance from human personnel out there, and they really do become a sanctuary for a lot of wildlife creatures. On the bottom right here, you'll see two examples of wildlife fencing. One is from a project that we operate outside of Merced County, California, that has a roughly 6 to 8 inch gap underneath the fence. In that instance, it was specifically for what's known as a San Joaquin kit fox, which you can see on the right images as well. This is not a project that we own and operate, but this is in the Southern California desert. It's called the Topaz Project. I think it was one of the largest installations at its time, where they put together a pretty robust programmatic study around the use of the solar facility for kit fox. And you can actually see a kit fox using the slot underneath the fence to use the arrays as both hunting grounds and shelter from avian predators. So if there's no questions about this, I'm happy to move on, but maybe I'll just pause for a second. Very good. Jessica just shared these two maps, so I'll just quickly flip through these and bring these over to this other more detailed map that I'll try and zoom in on here. And Jessica and I had spoken earlier this week. I'm looking to put together a better map that actually shows these distances in feet. But this is showing the current wildlife corridors that we've contemplated for this project. We have had, I guess, over the course of the last, I don't know, well, it's really been over the course of the last 18 months, several conversations with officials from Arizona Game and Fish about this project, about the corridor movements across the project. They are in their letter recommending up to half-mile corridors in several instances. We, in terms of looking at the site and our ability to lay out the site, determined that increasing some of those setbacks to a half-mile would encroach fairly considerably into some of the solar arrays that ultimately would lead to us needing more land than we would otherwise need to build out the same capacity. I have had, just in the last several weeks, kind of as some of your questions have popped up, follow-up conversations with officials at Game and Fish to get a better understanding of what it is they were looking for as it related to those design criteria. And I think kind of the consensus is that they aren't certain at this point. They don't have enough data to give a strict recommendation on what those corridor distances should be. And, you know, I invite Hannah to feel free and chime in here. But it sounds like where Game and Fish may be coming down is that they would be open to corridors of varying distances between a quarter mile and a half mile. And this project would really serve as a good test bed, provided that those animals were continued to be collared with radio collars and monitored their movements through the site to determine if quarter width really does have an impact on their movement through these areas. We can certainly pause here in a second. Before we do that, I would like to just use one other project as an example to just kind of give a really good visual aid here. This is the Wright Solar Park project that I mentioned previously in Merced, California. We developed it. This is a project that I actually developed and then sold and was built by Clenera. It's actually how I actually came to work for Clenera, as they did such an excellent job executing on this project. I wanted to come be part of the team. But you can see here, there's pretty large migration corridors through the project. These were driven at the request by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and by the California Department of Fish and Department of Wildlife. The corridors are actually significantly less narrower than what we're proposing for the CO bar. On this upright image, you can see the widest part of this corridor, which on the full image is on this kind of top centerpiece, is only 1,200 feet across. And this bottom image on the right, that would basically be where my cursor is moving here. So you can see that a 1,200 foot corridor creates quite a bit of open space, particularly when you are opening into open sections on either side of that. So to the extent possible, you know, we are committed to not going below a quarter mile. And as we refine our design, we'll work to improve those corridor spaces so they are the maximum extent possible at each of those crossings. So maybe I'll just stop here and happy to answer any questions or field any comments.
Mr. Fitzgerald, this is Chair Ontiveros. Could you put up that corridor map that Ms. Simmons had showing the pronghorn? No, that's the mule deer. Yeah, that one. Okay, see on the western corridor there,
Yep.
you guys have one of your one of the sections is really right in the middle of that corridor. I can move my mouse, but I
Yeah, right
just look
here.
at the western one and that middle one, it would be the most westerly one. That is right in the middle of that corridor, and there is not a lot of room on the west side of that, if you look at it.
Well, and so to address your comments there, I don't disagree that this section is in the middle of this corridor. I think these maps, and this is my own personal opinion, are a little bit deceptive on the corridor movements here, because this is, as my understanding, several years of data that are showing this across a large area. In talking specifically with the migration corridor expert at Fish and Game, his recommendation on this particular parcel was not that we were to avoid it, but if possible, if we could trim the corners off to the same way that we've done on the eastern side, that would kind of prevent and ensure that there was a migration corridor there. I told him that we would be open and willing to making that concession. It's just not reflected on this site plan.
Okay, now look at the, I'm going to call it kind of the middle. It's kind of like one of the dark green sections there. So that one right there. Okay, is
Yep.
that one not right in the middle of a corridor? Doesn't it just wipe it out almost?
So this area, and I'm not a wildlife expert, so this is just speculation a little bit on my part. Where my cursor is right here, south of that green area, is a hydrologically very low wet point on the project site, and basically is an ephemeral water source or tank. So I would contend that maybe the animals are coming and just using this source as a water source to drink from, which we do not plan on impacting or doing anything in this area where the water source is. But then again, likewise, you would still have those quarter-mile crossings on each corner opening up into the state land on those sections.
Okay, and I get what you're saying, but look at that one that we were talking about, that one section, that green section. It literally cuts off the corridor.
Right here.
Yeah. It literally cuts it off.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not an expert enough in this, so I don't know if Hannah, if you have anything that you could contend to that position about their ability to move around this. We had presented this plan to Fish and Game, and they had looked at this and did not express those concerns. But I do recognize your point, certainly.
Okay, you know what? It's actually 5:28 p.m. We're going to have the public hearing starting in 2 minutes. What
Okay.
we're going to do right now is we're going to take a 2-minute break. So we're going to pick up right where we left off, and the hearing agenda is going to be pretty short. So everyone just hang with us. We've got 2 minutes, and then we'll start promptly at 5:30, okay?
Sounds great.
Okay, Mr. Short, my clock shows 5:30. Are you ready on your end?
Madam Chair, I'm ready.
Okay, then it is 5:30 and I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to begin with the meeting rules and procedures. So, welcome to the May 25th meeting of the Coconino County Planning and Zoning Commission. Cases will be heard in the order they appear on the agenda. Following the staff presentation, the applicant and/or the applicant's representative may address the commission. As an applicant, if you agree with the staff report and have no additional information, please feel free to keep your comments brief. Any relevant comments are welcome. Following the applicant's presentation, I will make a call to the public. If you wish to address this case, please state your name and address. We ask that your comments be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be relevant to the case. Please address all comments to the commission. No matter how strongly you may feel about the case, all comments must be polite and courteous. After all interested public have spoken, the public comment portion will be closed. The discussion will then take place amongst commissioners. Decisions of this commission regarding any zone change or preliminary subdivision plat approval are referred to the Board of Supervisors as a recommendation. All other case decisions are binding unless appealed to the Board of Supervisors. If you disagree with the commission's decision, you have 15 days to appeal. Please contact staff at the Community Development Office for appeal procedures. Due to the virtual nature of this meeting, I will be doing a roll call vote of the commissioners to ensure accuracy for the record. Please mute your speakers and turn off your camera. And thank you all for joining us this evening and actively participating in our county planning. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Short, would you please lead us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Short. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the April 27th, 2022 minutes. If there are no modifications or corrections, I will accept a motion in a second, please.
Hey, I will move to approve the minutes for April 27th, 2022.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Ruggles and a second by Vice Chair Walters for approval of the April 27th, 2022 minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Vice Chair Walters.
Aye.
Commissioner Burton.
Abstain.
Commissioner Clifford.
Aye.
Commissioner Ruggles.
Aye.
Commissioner Best.
Aye.
This is Chair Ontiveros. I also vote aye. The motion passes for approval of the minutes unanimously. The third item is the public hearing, and that is case number ZC 21-013. Mr. Short, if you would like to present, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the applicant has requested a second continuance to work on legal access issues for the subject property across Cooper Ranch Road and through the Kaibab National Forest. Staff recommends a continuance of ZC 21-013 to the August 31st, 2022 commission meeting. And with that, I'll take any questions from the commission.
Okay, Mr. Short, I am not seeing any. However, I do see that Mr. Correa has just joined the meeting. Mr. Correa, do you have anything as the applicant to add to what Mr. Short just presented to the commission?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Nothing further to add at the moment.
Okay, thank you. All right, what I am going to do is I'm going to ask if there is anyone in the, well, no, we're moving to a continuance, so scratch that. I will take a motion and a second to continue, please.
Okay, Chair Ontiveros, I will make a motion to continue case number ZC 2021-013 until the hearing on the 31st of August, 2022 by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second time.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Ruggles and a second by Vice Chair Walters to continue case ZC 21-013 to August 31st, 2022. All in favor, please say aye. Vice Chair Walters,
Aye.
Commissioner Burton,
Aye.
Commissioner Clifford,
Aye.
Commissioner Ruggles,
Aye.
Commissioner Best.
Aye.
This is Chair Antiveros. I also vote aye. ZC 21013 has been continued to August 31st, 2022. The next item on the agenda is a call to public for items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the public that wishes to address the commission this evening for items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public, and the next item on the agenda is a continuation of the study session. So if we could please pick up the study session on where we left off.
Chairwoman or other commissioners, this is Tom Fitzgerald. Did you have other questions or comments on the migration corridors at this time?
Okay,